Hi, and welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. I'm Adam Huss, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Thank you for listening. The conversation I recorded for this episode covers viticulture, winemaking, and the philosophy of wine, and introduces at least one big idea, I want to say like at least 5 big ideas, about each of these topics that has not been discussed on this podcast yet. And since this is an international conversation, I wanted to mention our sponsor, Catavino Tours. They are based in Portugal and provide luxury wine and food tours in Portugal and Spain. The owner, Ryan Opaz, has written multiple books about wine and has actually been knighted in Portugal for his work with wine there. Yes, that means you can take a tour and your guide could be a wine knight. If that isn't cool enough, the best part is that Ryan is committed to building his business in thoughtful, ecological ways that reduce or eliminate the waste and the carbon emissions caused by his tours. He also conducts tours that focus on natural, organic, and sustainable wineries. If that sounds interesting to you, check out Catavino Tours at catavinotours.com/OWP. That's CATAVINO tours with an S.com/OWP for Organic Wine Podcast. And your travel can also benefit this podcast. My guest for this episode is Hans Peter Schmidt. He goes by Peter Schmidt, and he is a director and faculty member for the Ithaka Institute, an international network for carbon strategies and climate farming. And he farms and makes wine from the amazingly named Mythopia ecosystem in Switzerland, which he also uses as a research vineyard for the Ithaka Institute. He's also involved in other wine growing projects around Southern Europe and has a pretty big reputation for his approach to wine. He may be the most non-interventionist or natural or naturalistic winemakers I've ever encountered. He does some things that people would think are strange in the vineyard, and people would think him crazy for some of the things that he does not do. You'll hear how this is even possible, and hint it has to do with mindset as much as ecology. He also makes wine in a way that, once you hear its simplicity, could revolutionize your own winemaking. And if you end up making wine in a way that Peter does, Peter only requests that you send him a bottle to thank him for the idea, sort of intellectual property royalty payment. I sure at least want to try a batch of wine the way Peter makes it, or really doesn't make it. Peter ends the conversation with a perspective or really a meditation on how wine fits into the human story. So much of this conversation merely scratches the surface and gives us a glimpse of many beautiful things that we can begin to explore. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. Enjoy. Hi, welcome, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, cool. Good day's end.
Yes, I'm really glad that you made time to do this. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to finding out what you're up to. Could you start by introducing yourself and just where you are right now?
Just back in the Swiss mountains. I was in southern Spain, close to Malaga, where we have a vineyard project, and so it was a long drive home. And from southern Europe with spring flowers to snowy mountains. Oh, that's where I am now. I'm kind of wine grower and winemaker here in Switzerland. Doing some research in agriculture and climate. Well, love to be outside and do the work myself. That's a good day.
Yeah. Do you get a chance to do that? I mean, are you out there a lot? Are you now more
Yes.
involved in indoor activities?
Yeah. No. I'm doing my outdoor activities daily, but not always in the vineyard. So yeah, I try to do all stages with the people. I still do all the cellar. But then there are so many other projects, and time is time is a bit limited sometimes.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to give a list of kind of the things that you're involved in besides? Yeah. I mean, so you're in Spain. I mean, Switzerland is your home base, I take it, and then you have a few other things going on. What has guided these projects? Like, why did they begin, and what are you doing?
Yeah, you see, I'm not a wine grower by profession, not by my family. I was engaged in ecology,
Hmm.
and but more like from theoretical side and ancient history and how civilizations crumbled because of not being in agreement with nature's um, laws.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, from the outside and from far away, everything looks so clear. I mean, you know what could have been done to
Right.
avoid bad things, like you know from the outside how to avoid a war in Ukraine. But when you are inside, it's very difficult to get out. And
Yeah.
so my idea was like, I was young enough to um, to go around and not have just one guideline. So I thought that would be a nice idea to check myself with with the agricultural project. What's all about? What's
Yeah.
what's how does it feel when you wait for rain? Um, how does it feel when your neighbor sprays pesticides and you don't want to get into war with him, but you don't want to have these chemicals on your side?
Right.
And how does it feel when you do everything wrong because you thought it was so just that you do it? So so this kind of reflections and just the fun of doing something new brought
Yeah.
me to get into growing, into wine growing some 15 years ago now, 2004, I think.
So are you in charge of multiple pieces of land then?
Yeah, we it really started just like this. We had the opportunity to buy a nice piece of land at the edge of the forest, with only a neighbor on the downside.
Mm.
And it was like, yeah, if we find a vineyard like this, we do it. We just
Yeah.
do it. We just try it to make it to make it our way. I mean, I already did some wine just for family, um, some small pieces, but to get
Yeah.
really into it, it was like if we find by luck a good piece of land, and we found it. So, and we had the opportunity to buy it, and then we started it, and from there, um, we got piece by piece until we had, like, now it's 3.5 hectares.
Yeah.
It's in three pieces now. It's all deep slopes, different expositions, different altitude. So we are from 750 to 900 meter
Yeah.
above sea level, and it's just so beautiful from the natural side. You can see snow-covered mountains all year long, and
Yeah.
there was still nature, even so it was hampered by chemical farming in the surrounding. But
Hmm.
when we transformed the vineyard, um, then it was quite quickly that biodiversity came back. We
Yeah.
all vineyards we bought, it was naked soil, pesticides for at least 20 years, herbicides, fertilizer, just just the way conventional farming is in most parts of the world
Yeah.
still today. And then we changed, guided by the idea, if you grow something delicious, you should at least be able to taste it when you are there, and not
Yeah.
you know not taking off the chemical white cover of on top of the skin of your fruits. Um and so we planted trees and shrubs. We put in the green cover. We put yeah, it was like, do a lot of things that's not wine, that will
Yeah.
help the wine to become what it is.
Right. Right.
And then it came so quickly. Already after a year, it was like, butterflies coming back,
Mm.
bees, and all insects, and um, so that's also because it's still in this kind of wild nature that is preserved because of of the um, of the rough profile of these mountains.
Right.
It's
It's just
deep deep
too
valley
extreme for.
down, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And is that Mythopia?
That's Mythopia, yeah.
Yeah. And that how big is that?
Yeah, in hectare wise, it's like 3.5 hectare.
Okay.
Which is
Gotcha.
always kind of funny because when we do other agricultural projects, that has nothing to do with wine, it's like 3.5 hectare is like, it's not even agriculture.
Right. It's gardening.
But
Yeah.
when you have when you have a deep slope, 45 degrees, and it's like 10,000 square meters, and it looks so big.
Yes. I
It's
mean,
all
45
handwork.
degrees. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
So it feels big, and if you show it to people, it feels big. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tiny project, but it's also we never it was not our principal activity, and we never wanted to make it growing to make more out of it.
Yeah.
It should it's even a little bit too big. But we found some land that was too beautiful not to not to
Right.
take, and then
Well,
so it is. Yeah. So the limit was always our own work capacity. So
right.
for the most of the years, it's my wife, Roman, and I. We just did it, the two of us. Didn't have workers, and so that was our limitation. Um,
Right. Did you so you took these were already vineyards that you took out of conventional production and basically just stopped all of the spraying, fertilizing with chemical fertilizers and things like that, and let them return to just a naturally farmed system. Is that correct? Am I getting that all right?
yeah, it's like we took half of the vines out to make more space. So
Right.
they were planted in rows. So one out of two rows we took out to get more light, more space.
Gotcha.
It was kind of densely planted anyway. So we get down from 10,000 to 4,000 plants per hectare.
Okay.
And replace. So they were all old vineyards, and we replaced like missing vines. We replaced with trees or shrubs. Made places to put vegetables and fruits in. Um, yeah, getting flower onions in the soil. Yeah, also things that are just fun to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be always productive.
Right, right. And were you it sounds I mean, like it sounds like you were also adding other things in, other perennials in. Is that true? Were you adding other uh
Yeah,
trees and things like that?
yeah, a lot of fruit trees, apple trees, plums, peaches, quince. Yeah, whatever that grows. So like we have something like 50 trees in extra per hectare.
Got
There's
it.
smaller trees, some bigger trees. The edges, end of the lines are always bushes and shrubs, and
Right. No, at
yeah,
this time of
things
year,
to make it lush. Yeah.
at this time of year can you ski down the rows?
No, that's some 50 years ago. Um,
Okay. Oh, you mean you don't get the snow down that far anymore?
no, we still can ski on artificial snow over the house.
Okay.
but so but in the it's rare days that there's some snow, and
Okay.
it's all southern exposition. And
Got it. So,
even if there is snow, it melts away
uh,
quickly. And
nice.
it's all that on the southern side. Yeah, in January you can prune in t-shirts. So
Oh,
it's kind of
gorgeous.
Mediterranean climate,
Right. Just a higher
very
elevation.
dry. Yeah.
Got it. And I mean, I'm looking at a picture that it looks like it's surrounded by the forest. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, the higher edges is all
The higher
forest.
edges. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any problems with things that want to eat your grapes coming out of that forest on the edges and feasting?
Sure. Um,
I mean, I don't see any fencing or anything preventing.
no, it's like I count between 15 and 20% loss
Okay.
on
Gotcha.
the edges is like unavoidable. I
Yeah.
mean, I could, I mean, we could start protecting everything,
Right.
making fences, which makes work more difficult.
Right.
And then it's, these animals, they're part of this ecosystem. And
Yeah.
anyway, birds come, and you have, all the animals that live in the region, from deer to foxes to yeah, boars. They all pass. So, well, come and get what you want and leave something for me. It
Right, right. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I yeah, I like that. I like, and you're not using bird netting either.
No, no, we did 1 year, and then there were so many birds in the nets, and because they try to
Uh,
pass, and then they are stuck, and then if you're not
right.
there to get them out, then the
They
and
die. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, it's a luxury to say, well,
Yeah.
15-20% loss is, anyway, we have kind of teeny amounts that we produce
Right. Right.
per hectare, and so the whole project is not so much productivity,
Right.
is more like, we try to give nature something that we can learn on how it works,
Yeah.
and I feel this is part of it. But if I would need to live from it, and it's if I would have to feed my kids with the vegetables that the animals from the forest take, and I do not have enough, then I would do some measures, you know. But
Right.
here it's this different.
Yeah. I yeah, I think about that a lot. That like if you shift to your focus away from productivity, what do you do to augment that as a farmer if you had to rely on that? Is it I mean, I assume you have another job that you just have to work so that this doesn't become the thing that you rely on to for survival. Is that the idea?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we are independent. I lead the Institute for Ecology and Climate, so
Hmm.
my income is generated from my other work.
Got it.
Um, so Mythopia should not be a burden to me, because why should I do it? Um,
Right. Right.
so I mean, it's and all the wine growing. If you think, we make, when in Mythopia, Switzerland, we make something between 8 and 10,000 bottles. So on the 3 hectares,
Okay.
let's say we make 3,000 bottles per hectare.
Okay.
Um,
That's like a small
take
year.
take an average alcoholic. You could you could provide 5 of them on 1 hectare. But on the same time, you can feed one person on 20% of an hectare.
Right.
So
Right.
it's anyway, wine growing is luxury.
Hey, I'm jumping in here to give a shout out to our sponsor, Vermont Vineyards. When I say our, I mean yours and mine. The support I receive from folks like our Patreon subscribers and our sponsors, like Vermont Vineyards, literally makes it possible for me to produce this show for you. Vermont Vineyards provides design and installation of vineyards of all shapes and sizes in Vermont, New England, and beyond. Vermont Vineyards aims to reduce stigmas attached to hybrid grape varieties in New England wine regions while bringing cold climate viticulture within reach and enjoyment. If you're considering planting a vineyard in the New England area, check out Vermont Vineyards at vtvineyards.com. with an s.com/OWP. That's all lowercase, vtvineyards.com/OWP. Yeah, I was just going to say that. It sounded like where you were headed. And yeah, I think that too. It's like, why do we need wine growing to be this like highly intensive thing, right? It's not a survival, agriculture at the moment. I mean, it's on a homestead. I can see that where like, this is one of your sources of calories. It's the way that you're preserving, some of the produce from the abundance of the year so that you can continue to consume it through the long winter, perhaps. But
Yeah.
if you're for most commercial winemaking, it's like, why does productivity need to be the highest goal? It's not. I mean, it could be thought of completely differently, which it sounds like you have the luxury to do in one way, but also it's given you the ability to think about it in a different way as well. How does that affect some of the choices that you're making besides not using bird netting or fencing?
Well, there's another aspect is like, if I give nature so much power in my vineyard,
Yeah.
nature should also look for itself a bit.
Mm.
It should not make me too much work. It should. I try to find a balance in this ecosystem. That means it should be very extensive, and ideally I'm not so often in the vineyard. There's a lot of um, work that a normal grower does that I wouldn't do anymore. And so for me, it's also a measure for my success is how independent the vineyard is.
Yeah.
So, every time I still need to spray, even if it's not like chemical pesticides,
Right.
I
Right. Just
have to do something against mildew or something. I every time I feel this is not my job, I did something wrong because why would the vine need me, to survive?
right. Right.
There's something wrong. So I always feel when I do some type of meaningless work, I think there's something wrong in the system.
Mm.
So I don't apply fertilizer, because if you apply fertilizer, the plants become weak and sensitive,
Yeah.
and then you have to spray, and then they have too much grow in the leaves, and then you have to green prune, and then you
Right.
take off leaves, and then it starts regrowing in the beginning of the summer when there's no water, so you have to irrigate. So this type of vicious
Yeah.
cycle we have to
Yeah.
avoid, and I cannot yet avoid everything, but I
Right.
get to less and less, and so putting bird nets, um, that's a lot of work. That's I
Oh
think
yeah.
is meaningless work.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't do it just
Right.
for this.
Right. Right. No, I love that. This is how I think too. I mean, I joke that it's my laziness, but I think it is that perspective that you're actually talking about, which is like if the system is right, it will take care of itself. I just have to, I messed up in the inception of it, maybe in the conception of it, as well as in the installation of it or design of it somehow, if it needs me,
Yeah.
and it's sort of this process of weaning it away from me, and my influence on it to let it, yeah, be a thing that maintains itself. I love that idea. And how successful I imagine you are growing vinifera in your vineyard. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And how successful are you at avoiding or weaning, away from, like a sulfur spray or something that you do to prevent mildew on the grapes?
Um. Well, in good years, we are quite good.
Right, right. Gotcha.
uh,
And when you say
so
you go ahead, I'll let you go ahead, please.
yeah, so I normally I don't use sulfur. I
Okay.
hate sulfur because it makes smell everything too bad, and I don't like to go in the vineyard and need to change my clothes after it.
Right, right.
It's like you go in the cow shed and you have to change after it. There's something wrong with your cow shed. So,
That's a really good rule of thumb.
and so copper doesn't smell too bad. But so like three sprayings of with
Okay.
copper, and then the rest is we can do with milk. We do fermented grape leaves. Um,
You do
we
fermented
do
grape leaves? So like you
yeah
when you're out there sort of thinning the canopy, you
yeah
collect that and you ferment it and then that becomes like a
yeah
biological spray.
yeah yeah. I love this.
Fascinating.
We also use this for to add to the drip irrigation as
Fantastic.
acidifier, and then you have
Huh.
lactic bacilla that stimulate soil life.
And
Um,
is the milk as well? I've heard something about milk actually being an antifungal. Is that what you're finding as well?
yeah, milk and whey. We use
Yeah,
whey, which is cheaper, has same effect. Is a good treatment against mildew. Mildew. Um,
I actually heard of one vineyard. I don't know if you know of this, but I heard of one vineyard who literally only uses skim milk. That was their
yeah,
thing. Is that what, are you finding this
yes,
is really effective?
yeah, it is effective, but it does not work against powdery mildew.
Powdery.
So if you're like in a hot southern vineyard,
Yeah.
where you do not have powdery mildew, you
Uh-huh.
could and it's sunny, you could probably go through the season just with milk.
Okay.
Yeah. So like in Malaga in Andalusia, we have like one treatment per year,
Wow.
and that can be some just like milk. Um,
And is it and when you say milk, it's either milk or whey. It's kind of like any sort of dairy
yeah,
liquid.
there's something I use goat whey,
Oh, okay.
that also works. So it's not identified what is the active molecule.
Uh-huh.
There are scientific studies about it that it really works, but
Yeah.
they didn't identify the molecule, and it works when you have light. So with
Right.
UV,
Right.
there's a
That's what I've
reaction
heard
with
too.
UV and something that's in the milk. And if it's cloudy, then you can use sodium hydroxide.
Ah.
So
Huh.
that works also very good, and it's you use it in bread, and it's nothing toxic.
Yeah.
Um,
And so and
uh,
you're diluting the milk or whey, right?
yeah,
With water. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's like 10%. I
Right.
use.
That's what I
Yeah.
heard. Yeah, this is what I've heard as well. That's fun. The like your projects in Andalusia and Malaga, are you just consulting on them or are these other pieces of land that you are doing the same thing that you did with the original Mythopia where you took some conventional vineyards out of conventional production and you're converting them to just a natural system?
Yeah, this project was a bit different. So I'm partner in it. I'm not
Okay.
the only owner. And the idea was to replant a new vineyard as a kind of model for climate change. So it's like one of the hottest spots in Spain,
Got it.
regularly between 40 and 45 degrees in summer.
Yeah.
And so we use trees for shading. We have water recovery and subterranean drip irrigation with ferments, and so it's a bit more high tech everything. It's a company planting, so even if it's hot, it's now it's all is green, with green cover,
Wow.
it's flowers, it's olive trees, orange trees. Yeah, I mean, essentially everything grows there. It's just
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. I
And the interesting thing is like, um, if we talk about the wines that result from it, is like the wines from Andalusia, so we call it Mythopia Andalusia. Is
Right.
they are very close to what we do in Switzerland from the tasting. They
Okay.
are much closer to the Mythopia style of wine than Spanish wines.
Oh,
Even so, the climate is completely different. But because of I mean, the one thing is the winemaking, but it's also the biodiversity is the entire way on working with the ecosystem
yeah.
makes makes these wines kind of similar. And that's currently also the project that I'm quite fond of. I want to do same thing in France. So to have like three different climate zones, three different soils, completely different terroir, by making three kind of similar wines. Because in the end, it's about it's this natural product, and if you make it in a certain way, you make a sulfite free wine, natural wine, then we talk differently about what is terroir. Uh, I,
Right.
I think this is, the talking about terroir is too much about geology,
Yes.
and I don't think that geology is so important in the end.
No. It's yeah, we forgot about the biology, and I would say the like the human culture that
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, like I mean the way that you are farming, like if you're doing some conventional vineyard, it doesn't really matter what the geology is, your ego and the culture that it grew out of is as much of an impact as the geology, and you've eliminated biology from the picture pretty much. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, the vine plant is kind of it's an individual plant,
Yeah.
and it makes the best out of a situation.
Yeah.
It's like us. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm happy here in Switzerland. If I'm in Spain, I'm still the same person, doing my best, my daily life. So I think there's is more about the adaptation of the plant to changing environments that's interesting
Yeah.
than the environment itself.
Yeah. That's really interesting. When you make decisions about, how to, are you putting in new vineyards anywhere, or have you had that experience of putting in a new vineyard, or have you just worked with something that's already existing that you're changing the way
Yeah,
that it's.
yeah. In Spain, this vineyard is newly planted. There was no vine in the region for some centuries. So that's new planting.
And are you working
Um,
with variety? Like, are you trying to breed and select for varieties that are better adapted in that heat, or and to potential change,
yeah,
for climate change?
no, that would be very interesting. It's always on my bucket list to do it from the seeds
Yeah.
and to find it. But yeah, it never pushed it that far yet.
So how are you?
Um,
What's your process for decision making about how to design and plant, and what to do there, what to include in that system when you do that new thing?
yeah, you will be
You laugh.
disappointed because you know, in fact, I don't really care about what variety it is.
Oh, I don't either. That's great. That's
You
funny.
know, if I like Pinot, but I like Syrah, I like Grenache,
Yeah.
I like them all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I like how they come at different places.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that there is a place that's particularly perfect for whatever variety. I think if you create a good environment, any variety will prosper and make an interesting wine. And you don't know when you start, you don't know.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it seems like, different vines want to express the fruit in different ways. Like, yeah, and that is like a seller choice where you're like, you might make a red in one area with the same grape that in another area you do something different. You make a sparkling, like off
Yeah,
skin wine in a different area.
yeah.
So that's fun. Well, let's talk. Can we talk a little bit about the winemaking that you do? Because what's unique about your winemaking?
Yeah, you don't need to study to do it.
Okay.
I can explain it in 2 minutes, and everybody can do it. It's very easy.
Right. Right.
So, and there is, sometimes people say, yeah, but you should not talk about it so much because it seems so everybody can copy it. But I'm happy if someone copies it because then there would be more good wine out there. Sorry, but yeah, in Spain we put the tank like 1,000 liter tank.
Uh-huh.
We put in a vineyard, we harvest, we put the grapes in, and we close it and put it in the cellar. And
Okay.
then before the next harvest, we press it.
So wait, whole clusters?
Yeah,
Oh. Oh.
yeah, it's like a carbonic
Yeah.
maceration, but for 1 year. And because you
Uh,
put it in the vineyard into the tank, you have no influence from the cellar. So it's only
Right.
only what's white that comes in. And
Right. Right.
then we age it for a long time, 4 years, 5 years, in oak or in amphoras.
Right.
And
Just to uh-huh.
yeah, and that you get this slow oxidation, and that makes the wine stable. So you don't need to add anything. You just need time.
Do you the carbonic maceration helps exclude oxygen in the tank. Do you need to start a starter in that, or does it
No,
just starts itself once you
yeah,
get
it
everything
starts.
loaded in
Yeah,
the
you
weight
get
the weight of it expresses
right.
some juice. Yeah.
Yes, and then it ferments inside the berries.
Right.
So when you open it, um you eat the berry and you have the wine inside. And every
Right.
berry has its own wine,
Right.
and it's
Mm.
protected by the skins. So
Right. Right. Wow. That is pretty easy and
yeah,
awesome. I think that's one of the cooler ideas I've heard. And then, yeah, the long aging, definitely. So that's it. You don't need to add sulfur at that point because it's stabilized. Is anything turning to vinegar at that point? Like when
no,
you, you
it
don't have
does
a
not.
problem with that.
No, and even we do some really weird stuff, like keeping the barrel open for
Uh-huh.
some years.
Oh,
So it kind of evaporates part of it. It super oxidizes.
yeah.
The reds become white because they lose color, but they are so stable. And if you taste them blind, you would never think that's a 10-year-old wine that was exposed to oxygen. Once the wine is so stable,
Yeah.
it defends itself. It's
Right.
like it
Yeah.
works really good with the whites. With the whites, it goes much quicker than with the reds.
Okay.
So if you have this disobedience Chasselas wine that we do, you can keep the bottle open for half a year. You drink it. It's
That's
just
amazing.
fantastic. You know,
Well,
you
is it
drink you take one glass every month, and it's a pleasure every month. That changed a bit.
right?
No, the wine changes a bit, but it's always wine. It's always a pleasure.
And is it expressing a sort of matterized, like oxidized flavors then, or are you keeping freshness in it?
Yeah, you keep a lot of freshness, but you work with secondary aromas, especially
Okay.
in the whites. So the whites become kind of orange color,
Okay.
and
Sure.
you have this
It's all
secondary
skin,
aroma.
whole
Yeah,
cluster for every grape, right? So
yeah,
you're
yeah. It's now. I mean, it's now it sounds super simple, which is beautiful, and I love it. It took it took more than 10 years to get to this
just
point. You know, kind kind of investment.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. Well, I mean, this is the other thing about wine where it's like, I just, for those, there is this big upfront investment that you hope, it's already seems really long when you're a winemaker to wait like the 2 years, like till you can, sell that first wine, that you harvested 2 years
Yeah,
ago. But the reality is it probably would benefit from even longer most times, right?
yeah,
And that's what you're, especially in the style of winemaking that you're doing and stabilizing it. So it's that time is really critical. And so how long is it what is the average length before bottling from harvest for your wines?
it's 4 years,
four
4 to 5
years
years.
four
Yeah.
to five Okay.
So this year it was like we bottled 2018 in end of 2022, so that's only 4 years.
Yeah.
Um, but that's um, let's say the wines we did like 10 years ago. We did not do this whole bunch kind of fermentation,
Okay.
and I needed more time to make the wine stable.
Huh.
And now I gain 1 to 3 years depending on the wine.
Okay.
In fact, the wine is already stable when you press it after 1 year. It's very impressive. It's different. It has not this slow micro oxidation
Right.
from the aging, but the wine is already stable. I
Okay.
I prefer it 4 years later,
Yeah.
but you can drink it, and it's young, it's fine, it's balanced, and you can keep it open for several days without it turn. But I still do the aging, but I need less time now.
Huh. Okay. And do
But
you
yeah,
yeah.
sorry,
No, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I always keep some wines for longer, and
Mm.
do this. So we have wines from we bottled 2009,
Uh-huh.
um, just like before the winter.
Mhm.
Um, so I like to keep some stuff to see what happens,
Yeah.
and time's your partner with winemaking.
Yeah. It really is. I've I coming from somebody who has very is probably the worst kind of patience to have as a winemaker. It's definitely learning that. Luckily, time seems to pass a lot faster as you get older.
Yeah, it's true, and but yeah, yeah, it's it's a luxury that you develop
Yeah.
to wait with the wines and to care for your impatience with other projects.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to go back. Forgot to ask you, when you say you don't fertilize, are you not using animals, not using compost, not using any kind of inputs, compost teas, or anything that might add fertility back into the soil? I'm jumping in here one more time to let you know about our sponsor, is the first company of its kind that has addressed the ecology of the glass wine bottle and come up with a solution to do it better by collecting, removing labels, cleaning, and allowing winemakers to acquire ready-to-fill used glass bottles. This eliminates a huge source of waste for the wine industry and massively reduces the emissions footprint of the glass wine bottle, which has been a real black mark on the wine industry until came along. If you need glass bottles, check out at oom.earth. That's OOM.earth. And use referral code OWP when you contact them and let them know you heard about them on the Organic Wine Podcast.
Um, Normally not. So
Okay.
we have this green manure system with legume plants.
Right, right. So yeah,
Um,
they're right. So cover
that
crops
is
are providing.
Yes, that's enough.
Okay.
For vineyards that are well implanted, that's 30, 40, 50 years plus. Um, Usually they are balanced. They have the roots
Right.
deep,
Yeah.
deep down in the schist, and they don't need it anymore.
Right.
Um, for the wines that we planted in Spain, it was like we have we had to invest into the recovery of the soil. Also, in some places we had to dig some terraces and then
Yeah.
and there we worked with compost, with biochar. We always use the ferments in the drip irrigation.
Yeah.
I also like I really like subterranean drip irrigation. You need tiny amounts. It's like a liter per plant.
Yeah.
Already makes a huge difference, and because you get this lactobacilla down to stimulate, um, that's something that I really like, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, going back to our mutual, laziness or desire for the system to, have its own resilience and care for itself. Um, are you playing around with hybrids or, resistant varieties that, since you don't care about varieties, like have you introduced those as a way of, something that has that built-in resistance so you literally wouldn't need to spray probably from the beginning?
Yeah, I planted quite some white hybrids.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I mean, the idea is I like it. It's clear that I like it. On the other way, it's always for me is like vinifera is still this challenge, still
Ah, I
this
get it. Yeah.
challenge to make a great Pinot with my system, and and do not need too much intervention.
Yeah.
Um, I it took me a long time until I planted the hybrids. It was just like it was my honor to show I can do it with vinifera.
Got it. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't want to have these excuses of others that they say, yeah, you can do it because you do hybrids, but we don't like hybrids,
Right.
so we
Right.
do chemicals. And I say, no, I do Pinot.
That makes sense. That actually is that's a good I like that idea of like it is a challenge. I mean I like that. And let me and I'm just jumping around a little bit, but back to your winemaking. When you have whole clusters on, I, I'm guessing they're pretty mushy by the time you get around to pressing them then, or are they still full clusters at that point?
Yeah, it depends where they are in the tank. You know, the upper ones they are
Still
completely intact.
wow. Okay.
You can crunch on them.
Wow.
Um, we that we took some of these bunches and put it into glasses,
Yeah.
and then we send it to some of the restaurants that have our wines, and they
Right.
serve they serve the fermented berries. That's that's cool.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, and you crunch on them, and they're super tasty. But back to your questions, they are yeah they are
Pretty intact.
that those that are lower down, that they swim in the juice. You know,
Right.
so you have like if you have a 1,000 liter tank, half of it will be juice. Nearly
Right.
half of it will be juice after a year. So that
Got it.
means most of it got out, um, but and swims in the wine.
And are you having crazy tannins or does the tannic structure resolve itself after with that amount of time?
Yeah, that's really interesting because that was the thinking that it becomes too tannic, especially also with the bunches.
Right, right, with
But in
the
fact,
stems as well.
what you do is you ferment the bunches. So instead of extracting raw phenols when you press whole bunches
Uh-huh.
too early, um, the bunches are fermented. It's like sauerkraut, You can,
Oh.
it's like kimchi. If you
Oh, like
if you prefer to talk about sauerkraut, so in a kind of way we do wine kimchi, and
that's interesting. So you're talking the stems are sort of become this fermented
yeah,
thing.
the stems are fermented, and if you press them, they do not become bitter, and it's very gentle the wine.
Huh.
So yeah,
That's amazing. Well, yeah, I think you might have just spawned some new makers of that kind of wine. So hopefully we'll have some more good wine out in the world.
Would
Thanks
be
to
beautiful. Send a bottle around. That would be really my pleasure. It's like I think you can make with this method you can make so fantastic wines, and that would be so much fun
yeah, I
to
mean, I love
start
your
drinking other wines again.
I love the attempt to just get the actual terroir from the vineyard by moving the tank out there as well. I mean, do you clean it out there on site so that you're literally like, the right after cleaning, the very first thing that touches it is the grapes, or like
Yeah, that would be pushing it a bit further.
right, right.
Yeah,
You're not that
I would
crazy yet.
probably, yeah. Sometimes you have to work with people, and then you have to explain why to do stupid things, and it's difficult. But
That's
the tanks they come out in the vineyard, they're in the sun.
oh, true, true.
It's
Yeah, they're getting
it's
cooked.
it's August. Bacteria they are cooked at 45 degrees, so
Yeah.
probably that's enough.
That is great. That is really great. No, that's yeah, I think that's really interesting. But it also might explain why some of your wines taste similar, since that style is probably a pretty I mean, it probably is a very distinctive
Yeah,
style in terms
yes,
of what it does to the grapes.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I mean, can people interact with your wines or with you or anything online? Like, is there, what is the best way for people to learn more about this? I think we've probably whetted the appetites of lots of people to find out more about what you're up to.
Of Yeah, I think that the best way is to get to get a vineyard transformed into a garden and make a wine and send me bottles. I will respond to this.
I like that. I think that's a brilliant idea. um, your
And
website is
I would there are so
good.
many people that would love to get hand on these wines. Make make a Mythopia style wine
Yeah.
and you can sell it to a good restaurant.
Yeah, no joke. What's your production? It sounds like it varies a lot because you're hands off in the vineyard as much as in the cellar. So it depends on how many birds ate grapes that year and how the vintage was, that kind of thing. So do you have a average production each year from what you're working
Yeah,
with?
in fact, it doesn't vary. It doesn't vary a
Oh,
lot because every year you have something unexpected, but it's every year something different.
right. Yeah,
So it balances,
right.
and so usually, I mean, we are pretty stable for the last 10 years. So sometimes there's um some icy weather in spring. Sometimes there's a bit more mildew. Sometimes there are more animals because harvest is earlier. So
Uh-huh.
we always have, if harvest is very early, we have more birds that did not leave for Africa yet.
Oh, I
And
see.
if
Gotcha.
if the harvest is in October, it's pretty much preserved.
Huh.
So it's like every year something, and in the end we're pretty stable.
Huh. Gotcha. So, and what's that production? What's your total?
Yeah, it's around 8,000 bottles.
8,000 bottles. Yeah, you
Yeah,
mentioned
it's
that. Yeah.
something like
Okay.
this. It's also because sometimes we plant something new, and that makes more the variation.
Right.
But yeah, yeah, it's
Got it.
pretty like this.
Nice. Um, I'm guessing it's only available there. Is it? Are you exporting?
Yeah, we export a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
we love to get it um, blended to different cuisines and to different people, and so yeah, we send it to most
Oh
of
yeah.
the
Look.
countries that are engaged in wine culture, something to Asia, America, Europe. Australia.
Yeah.
We don't have Africa. Um, they're interesting Asiatic countries, where even like Malaysia, you would think they are not so much in wines.
Yeah.
That's I love this. I love this. What I don't like is, I mean, the wines are pretty expensive.
Okay.
Um, so, well, I try to keep them still affordable in a certain way, but they are, in the end, when they travel half the world, they are expensive, and
Right.
that makes a selection of people that drink the wine, mm, which is a bit of kind of pity. So,
Yeah.
so I preserve some wines for people that cannot pay it.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
that's why I also, people can make same wines, like with the method I just explained in 2 minutes, and so you get fantastic wine yourself, and you don't need to buy expensive wine.
Right, right. You'll put yourself out of business. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, I'm just looking here in the US, it looks like I mean, all the shops listed on your site or restaurants are listed in New York. But maybe it's beyond that. I don't know. But I will now be on the lookout. And great. And where I'm looking is mythopia.ch.
Yep.
Is that it? Great. Great. Um, any any thought? Like, can I just ask as a closing final thought? How did your mind move to this direction of looking at wine and working with the landscape and the kind of winemaking that you do, wine growing and winemaking? How did you? What was that journey that took you there?
Um.
So many things.
No, no,
Oh,
it's not so much. I think, um, um, maybe this is a bit impolite to say, but I'm not so much interested in wine.
yeah. No, I feel
Um,
you.
and and I love all that's that's the vineyard, make it a lush place to make the wines that I love. I don't like wine tasting, but I love drinking.
Mm,
So
yeah.
if you only have a glass, um, you don't know the wine, because the wine is is what you get into a kind of relationship with the wine, and it influences your thinking and your feelings,
Yeah.
and you should never regret this partnership with your bottle.
Yeah.
Um, and all this is fascinating, and I like it, and but I don't take it too important,
Yeah.
because in the end it's only wine.
Yeah.
And as we started talking about the luxury of making a couple of bottles on land that could also make food,
Hmm.
is like, um, it's luxury does not mean it's not good.
Yeah. I
Luxury
don't.
means for me it's an expression of human identity. We don't only do things that are useful. We are here to make things that are not useful. We are here. That's the that's because we are humans, to make
Yeah.
things that make no sense. Um, and that's why I love winemaking, because it's just part of this thing that makes no sense,
Huh.
but fun.
That is that's really beautifully said. Yeah, I remember I was visiting Sicily, and if anybody gets a chance to go to Taormina and go to the Greek theater or the Roman amphitheater, and it's this 1,000 seat amphitheater carved into the cliffs over the Mediterranean, and the backdrop of the stage that you would have been looking at as performers performed. The backdrop of the stage is looking down the coast at Mount Etna, with the smoldering top of Mount Etna really just right above the level of the top of the stage, which, like, during eruptions, I'm sure would upstage the actors. And I was just overwhelmed by the sense of like, clearly this place was not built with functionality or convenience or productivity in mind. Like this whole thing was a monument to the aesthetic aspect of life, the aesthetic aspects of life, that
Yeah.
thing that you're saying, the human side. And yeah, I love to think of wine that way. That's a really beautiful, beautiful thought. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for this beautiful conversation. I laugh when how you bring me to to express things that I may have thought, but thanks to you, I expressed it and heard myself saying it. That was fun. Thank you for it. Thank you for it. I hope the others will enjoy it too. Bye, Adam.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thanks to those of you who have subscribed to the Organic Wine Podcast Patreon page. You've been a huge help in making this podcast possible, both financially and just the inspiration that you give me. And it's humbling, and I'm so grateful. We're actually getting close to paying for the hard costs of websites and fees that are necessary to have a podcast. Of course, there's still lots of costs involved. My time is not paid for, but it's really nice to just have some of those monthly bills covered. I'm extremely grateful for and humbled by your support. And if you aren't a Patreon subscriber, the link is in the show notes. And I've created a support page at organicwinepodcast.com with that link, as well as other ways you can support this podcast. Thank you so much for whatever you can do.